I'm Luna Pan, and welcome to today's episode of Composer to Composer Interview. Today we have composer and founder of Primacord Production Music, Amara Primero. Amara is one of Australia's leading film and TV composers. Amara combines her creative and business skills across all aspects of screen music. She is passionate about supporting Australian composers and the potential for Australian production libraries. Her credits include Undercurrent and Amazon Prime's documentary, Shang. Primacord has supplied music for hit TV and streaming shows including Bondi Rescue, Sydney Harbour Force, Outback Car Hunters, Great Australian Bake Off, and Amazon's Making the Cut, and most recently Stan's documentary, Ben Roberts-Smith, Truth on Trial. Hi, Amara. Welcome to this episode of Composer to Composer Interview.
Hi, Luna. Thank you so much for having me.
I guess let's start off with, how did you become a composer?
I think it was something that I always knew I wanted to do from a very young age, or at least I felt that I knew I wanted to be a musician. So I knew that much from essentially the age of 4. I just it sounds strange, but I just knew. And so I didn't necessarily know it was going to be a composer at that point, but music was always going to be part of my life. And so, of course, my childhood happened and teenage years happened. And it was around my teenage years that I realized that screen music, there was something that I was drawn to with film and TV and music, and how music underpinned a great story, and how it just made me feel, and I noticed how it would make other people feel. And so I had a lot of feelings, going on with music and screen. And then, of course, I think coming from, I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, and I think coming from that world where, and especially the time period as well, it was sort of we had the internet was around, but it wasn't necessarily a tool for connecting with people and networking and this whole new world that we live in now. And so the people around me that I had to sort of guide me were my teachers, my music teachers, who didn't necessarily know the ways in which you would get to, screen music or Hollywood, or just writing music in any particular, way. So, the most obvious route was probably to go into teaching. And so I went into teaching, and I followed a lot of people's advice, and teaching was a really good, stable career. So I did that. And while I was going into that teaching career, I was gigging, and I was still doing a little bit of contract work and session work, and still writing music, but not necessarily as a full-time gig. And then, once I sort of spent a bit of time teaching, I think it was during that time that I really went, now we're in a different era. So, it was 10 years after, graduating from college, and then not dismissing the dream of composing, but just sort of thinking, well, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I'll just wait and see. Maybe it'll just fall in my lap. And as we know, things don't fall in your lap. You have to go out and chase them. And so it was while I was teaching that I decided to chase it. We were living in a different time, and I started to reach out to people and find mutual connections that might, be in the industry already, say in different areas like, I don't know, like animation, or, parallel fields, you might say, who might be able to refer me to different people for advice. And that's kind of while I was teaching music in high school. I sort of connected and networked a lot, and worked my way into having a new career composing.
Amazing. So from Perth to Sydney, when did you move to Sydney?
I think it was in 2007. So a while back now, 2007. And I had done some studies in Perth, and then I came over here to Sydney, and I continued some more studies, and I figured there were more opportunities here in Sydney than Perth, which, there are with performance. If you're a performer, there's more opportunities, and record labels and screen opportunities. It's where the networks are, and Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, and you didn't really stop there, right? And you frequently visit LA as well, just to network, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I've just come back from LA. And that was fun. And yeah, whenever I'm over there, obviously I make the most of it. And it's catching up with existing connections and friends. And I think sometimes being in the energy of a city that is so renowned for the screen industry in all facets, obviously, as an actor, as a writer, as a director, any kind of filmmaker, musician. I think sometimes being around that city's energy has a huge effect on your emotional response to what you're actually doing every day. And I feel that even just being around that can have such a great impact then when you return and go into your work and apply it to your everyday back home. So, but of course, I'm there for business, for networking, for meeting up with people and seeing what's next, what's in the pipeline, and then also reaffirming those relationships too. It's really good if you can visit, and people know that you're still interested, that you're still working, that they can call upon you, and that you're serious about your craft.
Speaking of the gigs from LA, I believe the project we're going to talk about, Making the Cut, is from over there, right?
Yeah, it is. Making the Cut. So that was a really exciting competition reality show. And I know we're all familiar with the competition reality shows, the elimination, the dramatic music, the contemporary edge as well with pop songs. And that's something that my company Primacord and Luna, I'm so excited that you're part of our roster. That we wrote some music for, and we pitched them a whole lot of music that we had existing, but we also wrote in response to briefs that were given to us to specific requests, like songs. I think one of the benefit, or one of the things as a screen composer, is being versatile and having that ability to be versatile and not just write a particular genre. I mean, sure, of course, have your niche, but then if you can also say yes to other opportunities like writing songs or producing beats, etc. And that's what we all do a lot of in Primacord. As you know, we have this versatility of different genres and styles that come up that we're all, fortunately, the whole team is able to respond to in some way or collaborate on. And with that particular show, it was a lot of fun for us. And it went for 3 seasons. Unfortunately, it hasn't been renewed for a 4th. That's what we were hoping for. But the company that does it, Hello Sunshine, they have a lot of different things in the pipeline. And, hopefully one day we can work on some more shows with them.
Yeah. Yeah, they do have a lot of shows going on. And once you're part of their circle, I'm sure they'll reach out to you, because you guys did so amazing on Making the Cut. And yeah, without further ado, let's have a look at the song.
The whole thing is overwhelming, and then now it's over. It's a lot to think about.
All the madness in the world got me thinking about our future.
I came into this competition to break out of this bridal box, bridal-wise, personality-wise. But through this competition, I was able to be open, and it ended up being really, really fruitful.
We are stronger than we even know.
Making the Cut has shown me that I am a fierce fighter.
We are stronger than we even know.
This experience has been amazing. You literally feel yourself changing assignment after assignment.
So strong that we can't stop. So strong that we won't stop.
It's molding you into the person that you're supposed to be, the designer that you're supposed to be, and the business person that you're supposed to be. Thank you. When you get to the end of it, you realize that you're just not the same. I get to build my brand way bigger than it's been. I get to take all the lessons I've learned here and apply them immediately. I feel so proud. I learned that I am most certainly not stuck in a box. There's no ceiling here. Like, I can do absolutely anything I want.
That was great.
Thanks, Luna. Thanks.
Did you produce all the music from Sydney?
Yeah, actually, my part anyway was from Sydney. And the interesting story with that song was, and I think this is kind of hopefully useful for emerging composers out there, off the back of what we were talking about with versatility, is that being kind of ready with a library of music is often good, or a library of songs. And so what we did during lockdown, and when I say we, it was myself and two creatives over in New Jersey, we wrote a bunch of songs. And they weren't for a particular project at the time, but we often will write songs for intention of sync purposes. So there's a bit of an art to writing songs with the intention of them being placed in TV, film, advertising, etc. But they can still have a lot of meaning and have a really good message and heart to it. So it was actually during the, I think it was lockdown, or I know it was definitely during the Black Lives Matter movement. And so one of the guys said, let's write a song in response to everything and all the madness in the world that's happening. And so that's one of the lyric lines in it, actually, is all the madness in the world has got me thinking about our future. And so anyway, we collaborated on this in response to that particular time. So there was that whole time of a lot of turmoil and strange things happening in the world. And so we wrote that song in response to what was happening. And we said, look, this might have potential to be placed on something around that kind of theme. And it was a time when we said in the world, we need to be stronger than we've ever been. And we said it can have a lasting impression too. It's not just for Black Lives Matter and that particular time, but this is just, the world needs to be stronger, just full stop. So this is a sort of timeless theme. So anyway, we got to work and we wrote this song, and it didn't take us long to write it. And, between the three of us, we wrote it and produced it and sent it back and forth. And we've got into such a groove now with things that it doesn't take us very long to write songs for sync purposes. So getting back around to Making the Cut and how it fits into that, it's not that we actually wrote that particular song for Making the Cut. We did a whole lot of other songs for the series as well, but that song we just put into the pitch basket to them and said, well, maybe this might work also. And it turns out that they really loved it, and they used it for the final episode and the final scene when the winner was announced. As you can see in the clip, she's feeling pretty emotional about her win, and she's feeling stronger than she's ever been. It was a big dream of hers, and now she's won. So I think that shows that it's having that library of music, or having at least ideas that can be transferred not just from one particular event but also to other events, is really important when it comes to writing music. And so that turned out to be quite a great success, for us, having that particular song placed, among others. But I just sort of point that one out because it just had that dual purpose, or that dual meaning as well.
That's fascinating. So it was already created, and then they happened to love it and used it. So it's a very special approach to pitching for a project with what you already written, and you're
Right.
just always ready.
Always ready, exactly. And I think something that's interesting to, again, for composers, if they want to sort of have that portfolio musical career and dabble in a bit of obviously they're instrumental, but then dabble in songwriting and top lining maybe if you want to be a lyricist for someone, is to keep in mind that the deliverables as well need to be, I mean, as composers, we're all used to deliverables and different specs. But with this particular, with songs, they will need the vocal track by itself, the instrumental track by itself, and I mean, sometimes they might ask for different versions, but as long as they have the instrumental and the vocals separate, then they will chop it up and remove vocals where they feel necessary to allow for the dialogue within the documentary or the show or whatever it may be. And I'm sure everyone is really familiar when you're watching a movie and then you hear I don't know, your favorite artist like Beyonce or Taylor Swift, and you hear that song and you think, oh, hang on, there's that whole missing section in there because the editor has been given the different stems and they've chopped it up. So there's also, as a creative, being okay with your song being, some call it butchered and sort of edited together as best they can, and making sure that the beats, sometimes you will hear things and little discrepancies and you think, oh, that beat was sort of not quite even, or it wasn't cut evenly, but it's sort of letting go of all of that and just trying to appreciate your work has been delivered in the best way that they feel possible.
Okay, so that's sort of a part of your way when you said you wrote the songs for syncing purposes. Maybe the vocals is only in the chorus and not so much in the verses. Is that kind of on purpose?
Yeah, making sure that the track has space and space to cut, and almost predicting the editor's needs. So not making it too wordy or just words that are too close together, or phrasing that is too close that they can't make a clean cut. And the same with the instrumental part as well, making sure that there might be a bass drop that you have, and that becomes a nice edit point for them to sort of cut if they want to get another part of the track and sort of mash it together. So it's those things, but then it's also lyric content and making sure that it is quite general and it's not specific. I mean, an example I like to give is when it comes to songs and sync is, it's, I mean, by all means, write songs about, Sally with the long blonde hair, drifting in the I don't know, the Tokyo summer breeze, but it becomes quite specific, and then it needs to be, perhaps the sync opportunity would then have to come along where it's a song about Sally's the character, sorry, in the movie, and it's set in Tokyo and she's got blonde hair. It becomes quite specific, whereas if you keep things general, and we did with that song Stronger, it's quite general. We had other songs in the show, that same show, Making the Cut, that Kevin, so he's one of my collaborators in New Jersey, he wrote it, and he wrote the lyrics and the beat, I think, and it was just work was the only lyric in it. It was literally just work, 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 and there was the beat that was produced around this, and it worked for the show because they were in the workroom just getting all of their stuff done within the show, and it's specific, so that could be used in any kind of setting, but with the word work is so generic, it can be utilized in all sorts of situations.
It's very smart and strategic ways for your music to get synced and chosen.
Yes, keeping it simple too, keeping it simple.
Less is more. So, how was the relationship with the director producer for making the cut, and how did you meet them?
Yeah, it was great. So I had my first encounter was with the editor of Making the Cut. Well, he wasn't actually the editor of Making the Cut at the time. He was the editor on Project Runway. And so Making the Cut was actually a spin-off of that very successful series that ran, I think, for about 10 years. And so yeah, we met, and I think we'd been in touch for quite a while on LinkedIn, I believe it was. When I say quite a while, I think for maybe a couple of years. And then I told him I was going to be in LA, and maybe if he'd like to catch up, we did. And then after that, we stayed in touch for a little longer, and it might have been 4 or 5 years after our meeting or our first, making contact, that the opportunity came up. Uh, and he said, "Well, look, I can't guarantee anything, but we're using some different libraries and some different music. Feel free to throw yours into the mix, and I can introduce you to some people within the company." And I do love that about people in our industry, is that most of the time they're really happy to engage and help you. And I think I'd like to think that most people in the world, if you ask them a favor, that they will at least consider it, and they're happy to help. Um, so there's that. But also, the other lesson from that too is how long it can sometimes take to build a relationship, and to not rush things, and to not sort of meet someone and hit them up and ask them for help and say, I'm a musician and I want to get my music on this. Will you listen to it? Will you put it on this show? It's more a case of being genuinely interested in the industry, and maybe even learning from that person and following their career, and not in an effort to get something out of it, but it just feels organic and genuine. And then, as I said, it kind of organically happened some years later. So that's the biggest lesson I've found from taking meetings in the States and anywhere, is just give it time. Sometimes sometimes we want to rush into it. So sorry, I've digressed a little bit, but so he was the editor of Making the Cut at the time, and he was actually editor at Project Runway, and then he became an editor and a co-producer, I believe, of the show. So a lot of my interaction was with him to begin with, and then we had a little more interaction, I think, with the post. I think it was the post producer, yeah, might have been even a music post. I think the difference between Australia and the US is that you'll often, and not just the two countries, but it depends on the project and the budget. You'll often, and I know that you'd know this as well, Luna, is that you're dealing with someone different on the creative side of things on every project. It's not just always the director, and it's not just always the producer. On one project, you might have more to do with the editors. And then on another project, it might be just the director you're talking with. Or on another one, it might be just the series producer. It sort of all depends. But overall, yeah, it was great. The interaction was really positive. They were highly organized, and yeah, we loved it.
That was great, Amara. Shall we move on to the next project?
Of course.
So this project is called Undercurrent. It's a docu-series. Is this
Yes.
Australian?
It is Aussie, yes.
So could you tell us more about the docu-series?
Yeah, of course. So this one was a 6-part series, a 6-part true crime docu-series, which I do a lot of, and now, as a result, Primacord does a lot of. All of the team write briefs in response to a lot of crime stuff. So this one is a 6-part docu-series about, I believe, a man who was found. Sorry, he was never found, but he went missing off the coast of Tasmania somewhere, and his partner at the time, she was accused of his murder. So she was accused of perhaps murdering him or throwing him off the boat, or, and he died, or something like that. And there were huge cases around this for years. The woman was sent to jail for, I think, a sentence of 25 years. I can't remember how many years she did, but she is actually, the long story short, she is out now, but she did spend a lot of her life there for what we believe was perhaps, what I believe anyway, I'm not sure. I think every creative on the project had their own idea of, did she do it, didn't she do it, and I think as viewers we all do that with true crime things. Some people, think, well, we all want to be the Sherlock Holmes and the investigator. And I believe that she didn't do it. And I think that was, from memory, that was the angle that the documentary took, was that she didn't do it. And the documentary had a big impact in helping her get released, really. And I think it was not just that, but it had a huge impact. And that's sometimes the wonderful thing about being associated with a project that is informative. It can have a really good effect on society or the community. So, so this project was, I think the clip that we're going to see was a rough assembly at the time, so it wasn't necessarily the end result, but it was a good indication anyway of the music and the feel, the tone. It was, the brief given was sort of minimal. They didn't want too much going on. It was background, ambient sort of music, but we somehow came to sounds that would evoke a harbour and boats and some sort of like music within the sounds of a harbour. So if you can imagine, and I don't know how we got to this, but I remember I used some bells in it, even though you don't have bells down at a harbour, and you don't have bells on boats necessarily, but there was just something about them that kind of worked. And I remember using filters, EQ filters, and taking out all of the top end to try and give that kind of, maybe the sound of the masts, rattling against the poles. I don't know, different seaside harbour sounds. And somehow we got to this kind of theme that would reoccur throughout, and it was introduced at the very beginning during the super teas and titles. So I think that's what we're going to see now.
We have no body, we have no weapon, we don't know what happened, we don't know time of death. We still know nothing about what happened to Bob.
There was thieves, drug users, drug dealers. Any of them could have killed Bob Chappell.
It's almost a classic whodunit. There are a lot of twists and turns.
You are in fact responsible for the death of Robert Chappell. I plead you now, once and once only, to tell the truth and to give up where Robert Chappell's body is.
They've pissed off some very powerful people.
If you really believe in something, you can't just walk away.
Hi, are you the owner of Four Winds?
Yes.
It's just that it's sinking.
It's a painful recording to hear. There's just this silence on the other end of the phone. I remember it was quite traumatic hearing it played.
Bob's on board. I've just tried to call him and he didn't answer the mobile.
I could just imagine what was running through her head.
Just after 7 this morning, police found the man's 16.5-metre sailing ketch, Four Winds, taking on water just off Maryville Esplanade in Sandy Bay.
Police, marine and rescue personnel responded, checked the boat, pumped it out and have stabilised.
Police became aware of Mr Chappell's disappearance after a rowing crew reported his yacht was sinking in the River Derwent.
But there was no sign of the 65-year-old yachtsman on board. He hadn't been seen since lunchtime yesterday, but was expected to spend the night on the boat.
On that day, Crime Response Unit, they actually went to the sinking yacht, uniform went obviously, and Marine Police.
Police found blood on the boat and clear signs of sabotage, with a pipe cut to let water in.
My office didn't get notified about it until about lunchtime that day, and from there on I allocated one of my detective sergeants to go and have a look at the yacht and start making some inquiries.
Police and his family remain baffled as to what's happened, but murder hasn't been ruled out.
So a lot of mystery unfolding, a lot of unknown, portrayed by music. That was great.
Thanks, Luna.
Could you tell us how you started the relationship with the director producer, and how did they bring you on board?
Yeah, of course. So I was brought on board through it was recommendation from someone from another project that I had done. And that's once you start to, I think, have, one project that is fairly successful and people are happy with, you get the repeat work or the referrals. So this was a referral from someone else, but with the series producer, but the head of the company, he actually had worked with me on another project before. So it was kind of good. In a way, it was two referrals. Someone had already worked with me, someone else had heard about me, and then they said, well, okay, it's kind of like two recommendations here, we'll bring her on. So that was a really good, and look, to this day, I do a lot of work with them, and also Primacord does as well. So it's been a very fruitful relationship.
So did you have to pitch against anybody, or?
With this one, I didn't actually have to pitch against anyone. What I did is, and I still try to do this even if I know I have the gig, I tend to take the approach of, and I remember John Travolta, so this is not me saying it, but John Travolta actually said this, and I've remembered it. He said he treats every gig as if it's his first or his last. And I remembered that because I think when you start to get on a roll with things and you think, oh yeah, they've worked with me before, I've got this gig, I don't need to go in with pitching any ideas, they'll just tell me what they need and then I'll write. You can kind of take it for granted, and there's always someone who is younger or newer to the industry or is working their butts off, right behind you, who will put in more effort and then as a result might become more deserving of that gig. And therefore, I try not to get complacent about it. And so I will go in and I will bring notes and I will bring a deck in. I'll bring, even if they send me sometimes a PDF of photos or screen grabs, they'll send it to me and I will go in with I'll grab those photos and I'll put them together into iMovie. I'm giving away all my tips now. But, so I'll put them together into iMovie and I'll write some music to it, and I'll go into the meeting even if I know I'm not pitching against anyone and I've already got the job, because I think in this industry, and especially in Hollywood, but I like to just have the same approach here, is that you just never know until you sign on that dotted line, and even when you sign on that dotted line, you can still be replaced if they're not happy. So that's why I go in really prepared and I will pitch music with these images and sit down and we'll talk, or if we're not sitting down in person, we'll chat about them. I'll send them to them in an email and then we'll chat on the phone after. So I've been fortunate to not have to pitch at this stage for many projects because of the recommendations, but I still will pretend like I'm pitching against myself from the last gig, So I think what was funny with one of the shows I worked with that same company on, the brief they gave me was, we really love what you did on the last show you did for us. Could you do exactly the same kind of thing, but just with a fresh approach? And in some ways, I felt a lot of pressure there because I was trying to be sort of better than my previous self, my previous work that I had done. And I kind of took it for granted because I thought, oh, well, they'll just, if they want, if what's been referenced is me, well, then that shouldn't be too hard. And what happened was I think for a while they weren't actually liking what I was delivering as much as what the previous project was. So I felt like I was competing against this other version of myself. It was a very strange experience. I was competing against this other version of myself, this other composer who I couldn't quite, meet the bar to. We eventually got there, but yeah, it was interesting when you're trying to create something fresh with the same people who know you. You could easily fall into the rut of, oh, she's not kind of giving us anything new. She's just sort of doing the same thing as the last thing. Yet they kind of want the same thing as the last thing. But it's a very complex kind of push and pull. We want the same, but we want it fresh. We want it to sound like you, but we want a different spin on it. It's, as you know, it's just interpreting productions ideas sometimes are quite challenging.
Yeah, maybe when they say same as last time, maybe it's just a very generic comment on how you collaborated and how the music was sounding tone-wise, or it could be anything, really.
Exactly.
That's really good relationship you have nurtured and kind of just evolved, and Undercurrent was just one of them, and you're still working with them. That's really impressive, and that you're still getting gigs from them and keep building that relationship.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the flow on work. As I said, you never know when you could be replaced. And I think it's okay if you are. It's not that you're replaced as much as they might try someone else. And that same company, actually, there was a true crime show that came along, and I had done quite a lot for them. And then I saw it had been advertised, and I just checked in with them and I said, oh, this looks exciting. Have you got any music lined up for it? And they said, oh, you know how much we love your work, but we're trying someone else this time. And I think that's a really good lesson in not taking that too personally, because you could look at it, you could see it as, well, hang on, you've used me on all these other projects for all these years, and now you're trying someone else. Am I not good enough? Am I, did I do something in the last one that wasn't? And, you could see it that way, or you could completely respect the fact that as a creative, it's important that they do try someone else for their projects, and that they do, that they do get a different sort of sound and a different approach, and that you were in the shoes of maybe the other person that they have chosen for that project. You were in their shoes once upon a time, hoping that you'd be given a break. So there's all of that, having a lot of empathy for both parties, the production company and the other composer that they've decided to go with, and realizing that we're all friends in this industry. We're not competing against each other. It's like we're celebrating each other. So, Luna, when you get that when Brian Tyler gets sort of tired of writing music for Fast and the Furious, and you're the next one in line for that franchise, the whole industry will just raise you up and say, of course, we would all want that gig, but Luna got it, and she's the most deserving person to have that gig. And I think that's what's nice about our industry, is that we're backing each other for those gigs, and not necessarily competing. It's a healthy competition.
I think when you do show that kind of bitterness, or any sort of that you're unsatisfied with that they hire someone else, they could feel it, and then that might just make things worse. But you respect them, and you're still happy for them, and I think that really says a lot about you and how you work and how you maintain that relationship.
I believe that there's enough. I mean, there's so much content out there in the world now, right? There's content everywhere you look for screen. And I mean, screen is now not a definition of the cinema or TV. It's now there were for a time there. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but there was Facebook TV. There's TikTok stuff. People are getting paid to write music for TikTok influencers and a myriad of things that I don't even know is out there. But I don't know the specifics, but I know that there's so much content. So I believe there's enough there's enough work for all of us.
Despite all the works you've done solo, we know that you create a company called Prima Chord. And what has motivated you to create a team of composers to work on projects instead of taking on all of the projects for yourself?
I think what you've just said there, what motivated you to create a team rather than take it on myself is I think the answer's wrapped up in that I just couldn't. And it's probably a good problem to have when you have so much work coming at you that you cannot handle it yourself. I mean, that's kind of the dream of most musicians, is that I've got too much work and I have to, I can't do it all. But I had well, there were two things. There were two reasons why this happened. So yes, a lot of work was coming along, and I didn't want to say no to it, because I thought, well, this feels silly to be knocking back work. There's got to be another way, maybe. And what I decided to do by bringing on a team to sort of help, that's obviously that model is around the world. Lots of composers are doing that. So it felt like kind of the obvious thing to do was to just bring, a few friends on and let's do this project together. So there was that. But then also the projects, I was noticing that some of the companies I had already worked for were not hiring a composer, but they were going and using production music libraries. And I did ask the question, I said, I'm just wondering, why you're choosing production music libraries over, a composer. And they said, it's just budget. They said to me, we can't afford you. We'd love to use you, but we can't afford to pay what we were able to pay on the last project. And so it made me curious about, I suppose, how they were licensing their music and where they were getting this music. Then I realized they were paying in the long run for a year's license, very small fees to have access to these libraries of thousands and thousands of pieces of music. And so I thought, okay, I personally can't compete with that. I'm just, they said, look, if you have a library of music, we'd love to use it. And I thought, okay, how much do they need? And often they'd say, look, we probably, for this particular series, we might cut with 200 to 500 pieces of music. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have that kind of library. And so that's where it sort of came from, was, well, maybe what if I did have more music? And so some of my friends in the industry, and I've mentioned Kevin before over in New Jersey when we worked on that song for Making the Cut. He was one of the first people that I called upon. And Isabella, who is our A&R coordinator, Isabella. So I had her help out as well and collaborate on a few tracks. So there were a few people that I knew that could work on this music, and we came together and started to deliver for these shows that had very, very small budgets, if any. And we knew that if we collaborated on them, we would receive royalties on the back end. And I think that's the part that everyone sort of these days will stop and want to know more about it, and they get curious about it, and they say, oh, tell me more about the royalties. And particularly with the programs that we do, so in unscripted, competition reality, anything that's on a network, like a big network, a commercial network, anywhere around the world, is going to be very good in well, to this day anyway, still, as long as there's advertising on the station, it's going to pay very good royalties. And if you have a lot of music then circulating on those those networks, where if it's CBS or ABC in the US, or if it's channel 7, 10, 9 over here in Australia, you're going to see some back-end royalties that can be quite nice if you consider having more, if you can get more music circulating, musicians can make a good living out of it. So I think that's what sort of drew us to that at the time, and that's why Primer Chord was born, because there's twofold to it. It could help musicians start to earn a living off music, and I think that's the part that I'm really pushing with composers, is saying that you can, if you work really hard, you can make a living off this. But secondly, it allows composers an opportunity to have a credit, on their portfolio or their resume, to say, hey, I had 5 placements across these TV shows, across these networks, and that actually builds some portfolio credibility out in the industry when pitching for other projects. So it kind of feels good to share the love.
I guess many of us will want to know on the financial side of the royalties and how it works.
Yeah.
Could you please give us a little rundown of how it works? And for example, you have a track placed on a show, and how much royalty would you get from that, and how often would you get, and how much? Like a little brief introduction would be great.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the biggest question that's always asked. And I still remember, one of the composers who was a great mentor to me in this industry, I asked the same question, how much, what's a royalty worth, And he said to me, how long's a piece of string? And I thought, well, that doesn't answer my question. And, I sort of came away thinking, well, I'll ask someone else. And then the next person sort of had the similar kind of answer. And unfortunately, I'm going to answer the same thing as well, is how long is a piece of string? Like, no one knows. Of course, there's a rate card with the PROs like APRA and BMI and ASCAP. But it's quite an intricate, detailed calculation. And so I couldn't tell you, well, if you get 30 seconds of music placed in a TV show, you're going to get X amount of dollars. What I can tell you is that if you get 30 seconds of music placed in a TV show on a network, like a major network like Channel 7, that airs at prime time, so between the hours of like 7 and 10 p.m. at night on a Sunday night, I can say that will probably pay you a lot more money than if the same 30 seconds was aired on the same network at 3 in the morning. And so at 3 in the morning on the same network, or if that 30 seconds was placed on a show that only was viewed on Netflix or Stan or Amazon Prime or any kind of streaming service, the royalty rate is going to be a lot less. And this seems to be something that I feel like people are not talking about as much. A lot of composers get surprised when I say to them, the royalty rate is significantly less on streaming services like Stan and Netflix, and people are really, really surprised. They'll say, really? But it's a Netflix show. So there's this aura around, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Netflix by any means, but just as it stands, the facts are streaming does not pay the same way that a terrestrial channel network like 7, 10 or 9 pays, and the reason behind that is because there are big advertisers associated with those time slots. Say it's 7:30 on a Sunday night on Channel 7, you watch who's advertising during that time. You're going to have Mercedes-Benz, and you're going to have Woolworths and McDonald's and Qantas. Whereas if you look at 3 a.m. on Channel 7, you're going to get these kind of weird, cheap commercials. I think if anyone's seen network TV at 3 in the morning or remembers it, you're not getting the big brands advertising then. You're getting kind of these, I don't know, or dating sites. Back in the day, it used to be like dating sites. So just awkward commercials at 3 a.m. So you're not going to have that advertising spend. Therefore, the royalty rate that translates from the advertising and the pool of money that goes to APRA is a lot smaller.
Okay. And how much music? Obviously, it's the more music placement, the better the royalties.
Right.
And how many pieces of music, let's say, just on a few shows, do you really see royalties coming in? It's like kind of significant enough for you to think, oh wow, this could be my major income or some of it. Is there like a rough sort of amounts of music?
Look, I can probably give a personal experience without giving the whole number away, the actual full figure, but a personal experience was from a TV show that I wrote all the music for. It was a series, and there were 5 parts to it, and it had quite a lot of reruns. The chunk in that quarter that went in was like a big wow. Like, as a composer, I had never seen money like that before. I thought, this is insane. Like, some people earn this in a year. Like, again, that's going to be really vague what I say now, because you'll be thinking, well, what kind of money are we talking earning in a year? Whose income in a year? So I'm being incredibly vague, I know. But let's say it was a significant amount. And I thought, did it air that much? And it was, it was a network TV show. And I think, 5 parts, 4 or 5 parts. And it went for maybe, what did it air for? It aired on, I think, multiple, like the sister channels as well. It was like 7, 7, 2, 7, Mate. No, it wouldn't have aired on Mate. But it kind of went between the two. Maybe it was like over 8 weeks. I don't know. But in 8 weeks, it was sort of like, well, that was a quick lot of money to make in 8 weeks. Obviously, it came through 9 months later or something, or, something, whatever the distribution after airing, whatever the APRA distribution was. But so in that sense, yes, you can. And it's a bit of luck too, because it really depends on the show you get. So you say yes to a project sometimes and you don't know where it's going to air. And even if you do know where it's going to air, you're likely not going to say no to it. You'll be like, well, okay, it's streaming, but it's still worth doing the project. So circling back to your question, how much music? There would have been, that show would have had probably 40 minutes of music in each episode. It was very music heavy anyway. And it was exciting enough for me to go, yeah, let's keep doing this business. And then obviously there are a lot of composers out there who have regular placements on a lot of reality shows around the world, like the Kardashians or MTV shows and Bravo shows, and they get maybe a handful of pieces of music placed in these shows per season, but they're writing music every day. They're writing music every day. Their music is getting placed every week in something, and they're making incomes solely on music. So it is completely possible, despite what the industry says about, composers can't make a living. If you're clever about it and if you talk with the right people and you're committed to writing so much music every day, and it's something that you're happy to do, then yeah, you can make a lot of money.
So I guess so in royalties, from you creating the track until the royalties hit your bank account, it could be months, it could be years, right? It could, and you don't know when and how much you will get. So there's a little bit of a luck. There's a bit of a surprise when you see that lump sum of money. And what do you do for the time being? Like, how do you make a living before your royalty comes in?
You're right.
Yeah, and how do you manage it?
How do you do that? So the best advice is to, in the initial stages, do not give up your day job. be clever about it. And as you said, it's time. It takes so much time for royalties to come through. If they're domestic, I mean, I say this loosely, they shouldn't take too long. If they're international, you can be waiting a long time. And the snowball effect can be good. So once you start to see one lot, then the rest start to flow in, and then you notice you've got one lump sum, and then the next one comes in from some time years before, and certainly not trying to put people off it, but it's see it as an investment. So if you were to invest in the stock market, or if you were to buy property and wait for the value of that property to increase, you're not going to just buy the property and then in 6 months sell it, unless you're doing a flip on it, but you're going to wait and wait for that to increase in value. It's an investment, and it's the same thing with the stock market. You don't just buy stocks and then sell in 2 weeks from now. The same with this. You write the music, it's placed, and you wait. And in the meantime, you look for opportunities like the stock market where you see, well, that's low, I'll buy in at that price and, leave my money there. And then, I'll buy that other share at that price and leave my money there. It's the same with music. You write that particular suite of music and you put it there and you wait. And then in the meantime, you write more music and you put it there and you wait. And you keep doing that with all of your music. And you have your day job, you have whatever that is, you teach music, or I would recommend, where possible, to keep yourself sort of inspired to, to at least find a career that you can engage with music or talk about that thing that you love. So a lot of composers become lecturers, and I've done some lecturing work as well, and music teaching, session work. You have that portfolio career where you're doing many different creative ventures while you're staying consistent to writing the music. So don't give up on the music. I think that's what sometimes people think. They see their first royalty and it might be, some people it's great. I heard somebody told me a story, I can't remember, it must have been someone in the US. They said that their friend had a royalty drop that was so good she was able to go out and buy a condo from it. That was just, she was like, oh, I got all this money, I'm going to go and buy a condo on the weekend. So that's a significant drop to be able to buy a house, at the end of one of your royalties. But then your first royalty drop might be, I think I remember mine, this number I can disclose comfortably. Mine was 52 cents. So it was I used to say to people it was 54 cents. And I only checked some time ago. I thought, oh no, it was actually 52 cents. It was even less than I thought. So that was my first royalty. And I think just not becoming too glum about that, and knowing that if you keep writing the music, it's going to pay off. Especially if you're being told your music is being placed somewhere. Then you go, well, I have the knowledge. Someone's telling me my music is going to be placed. Well, I just keep doing this and wait.
Yeah, so just keep doing your thing, keep writing more music, wait for the royalties to compound, and then eventually drops in your bank, and it will be like, whoa, I can...
That's it. It's just another form of investing. And it's not for everyone, I understand. Some people are happy to invest in other ways. But, if you can sort of see this through, it can be really lucrative.
That's it's very good to know. I'm sure for other composers that want to break into the TV industry and for music placement, and even for other music like trailer music, I'm sure there are a lot of production companies that do that placement.
Heaps,
and there are good royalties in that as well.
Yeah.
So there, if anything, this is an additional way of making money and make yourself financially available to create more music. So thank you, Amara. That's very, very informative and helpful.
Of course. Thank you, Luna.
I think last but not least, is there any additional advice you'd like to give to emerging composers in Australia? or rest of the world?
I think what I said in the last message just then about investing, just invest in yourself, and obviously investing in writing music, or investing in your time to write the music and to acquire your own library. I think that's so important, is to have a library of music, or at least a portfolio of music that you can pitch to show this is how versatile I am. So investing in yourself, showing versatility, and I find that writing music every day helps. I don't write music every day now. I used to, but that's, I think, what gave me the head start, was doing it every single day. And I mean, there are so many things that I can, that I could suggest. But back to investing in yourself is, investing meaning to learn as well. Take the time to meet with people and don't be in a hurry. So meet with people, learn about, what they have to say, take guidance from them. Don't be in a hurry to just have your music placed somewhere or to get that TV show and pitch your music, but just meet with people that are in the industry and ask them for guidance and advice. And that's a lot of what I did, and I still do now. I don't ask for work, and I don't ask them to listen to my work, but I just ask for some guidance, and even offering to, say, pay people. I know this seems sort of extreme, but if it's somebody who you feel is like really, really ahead in their game, or if it's, say, an agent or a company, and there might be someone within that company that you could pay as a consultancy fee to, and that's another form of investment, is saying, well, look, I'm happy to pay for your time to have you consult, and help me with this next stage. And oftentimes they'll say, look, don't worry, just pop by the office and we'll have a chat. But just knowing that you're prepared to invest in yourself and take time.
It's a marathon, isn't it? It's not 100 meters that you're getting into to become John Williams. It could be years of relationship building and nurturing for you to finally get that big gig.
Yeah. And look, for some it might be just quick. Everyone's got a different journey, but most of the time people I talk to say that they've had quite an epic journey. And I think that's because of that a lot of people give up. And I say, don't give up. If it's really something that you love and you want to do, don't give up. Just do many things and keep enjoying the process along the way.
That's very inspiring, Amara. That's I'm sure a lot of composers would really appreciate that in this economy where everything is so expensive and it's difficult to maintain a career in the industry. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the interview, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy what you said about your project and your relationship building, how royalties work. It was really great to have you.
Thank you so much, Luna. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.